This first segment, produced by Justin Huebner, looks at how the Evansville Water Department gets our fresh water supply to us every day.
The City of Evansville Water Department delivers water to over 65,000 customers in Vanderburgh County. In today's segment, we will investigate the inner workings of the water department and how our water we use every day is delivered to our homes and businesses. We will also provide you with information about how the water department maintains and repairs the pipes that our water travels through. To get this segment flowing, so to speak, we recently caught up with Water and Sewer Utility Water Superintendent Roger Johnson. Hello, Mr. Johnson. Thanks for meeting with us today.
No problem.
Could you tell us about your job and what it provides for the City of Evansville?
Well, I'm the water superintendent for the city, and so one of my main goals, one of my main jobs is to kind of direct and supervise the staff that's responsible for the operations and maintenance of the water system. And that includes production facilities, distribution system, and the meter department.
So I heard we get our water from the Ohio River, is that true?
Yes, 100% of Evansville's water does come from the Ohio. In 2010, we pumped an average of 23 million gallons a day from the Ohio out into the distribution system.
So what's the first step to getting our water purified?
Well, the first thing we have to do is suck it out of the river, and that's the structure you see behind us. That has 6 large pumps in it that suck the water up and out of the river and pump it into the plant. If you'd like, I can show you the steps.
Okay, thank you.
It's very loud inside here.
Right.
Yeah. The water is flowing through a channel under the floor from the river into a big reservoir, and it flows through those screens and removes any sticks or wood or any debris that might be in the river. It screens that debris out so it doesn't clog our pumps up or damage our pumps. Then the large pumps then suck it up out of that reservoir and pump it to the plant for further processing.
So could you tell us the next step in the process?
Yeah, after the water's pumped from here, it goes through what we call a raw water flume, and it's more or less a trough that the water travels through on its way to the sedimentation basins. We can go look at that now.
Is this where it comes straight from, out of that?
Yes, the pump's out there is discharging right here. And then from this point on, everything else in this plant is gravity. That's the only pumps within the plant other than when it leaves the building to go out to the system.
This is nice.
You want to go on over and see the sedimentation chambers now?
Yeah.
The raw water that you saw coming down the flume flows into these chambers, and those motors that you see there are driving a big mixer that's down in the water, and that's stirring in a chemical called alum. And that chemical makes the small particles that are in the water, makes it all clump together and form those larger particles, what we call it flock. And so those larger particles then weigh more as they're clumped together, and so they sink to the bottom then. So it goes through this process, then it comes up in the middle over here, and as it flows across this settling chamber real slow, those large particles sink to the bottom, and then they're scraped out to a drain. Well, then the cleaner water is here on top, and it flows over this weir into this channel, and this channel makes it flow into another underground reservoir that allows more time for the smaller particles to settle out. Then after it flows through that secondary settling basin and the smaller particles are sinking to the bottom, again the cleaner water's on top and it's flowing out of that second chamber and then it flows into our filter beds, which are all inside these buildings, and we'll go see those next.
Has this facility always been a water-based facility?
Yes, it was built brand new in the late 1800s, in the 1890s, as the water plant. Originally, we didn't have treatment and filtration. It was pumped straight from the river to the city. But it was really primarily used for firefighting purposes, and back then, because a lot of people had wells and stuff that they drank from, but the city supply was mostly for firefighting purposes.
So could you tell us where we're at?
Yeah, right now we're in one of the filter beds buildings, and so this water has flowed in from the clarifiers and the settling basins that we saw outside. The water is flowing through the pipes underneath us, and it comes up through these filter beds, which is layers of sand and stone and anthracite. And as that water travels up through those layers, it filters out organisms that can't be killed by chemical treatment. They're actually physically filtered out. And as the water comes up through those layers, then it flows into the troughs on top of the sand, and at that point it's been treated and cleaned, and then the water leaves here then and flows into what we call a clear well, which is the clean water that's ready to be drank. And from those wells, it is pumped out to the city.
So finalizing our tour today, where does the water go from here, and what are we actually monitoring?
When the water leaves the filter plant, it travels out into the system through a network of pipes, and depending on where it's going, depending on the destination and the topography of the ground that the water's traveling through, as to whether it has to go through a booster station to reach the destination, the far corners of the system. What we're looking at here on this screen is the elevation of each one of our water towers throughout the system. And each colored line represents a different water tower. And then underneath shows the different pressures that are being pumped through our booster stations throughout the system.
So could you explain to us why the red line is dropping like this?
Yeah, that is our Lincoln water tower, which sits at the intersection of Lincoln and Green River Road. That's a 500,000 gallon water tower. And so what's happened here, as this is the timeline beginning at 7 a.m. this morning, and so we were up here approximately 18 feet, 19 feet. As time goes on then, at a little after 9 o'clock, this tower is feeding the east side of Evansville. Well, at 9 o'clock, we're seeing peak demands on the east side. And so what has happened is they've drawn the elevation of the tank down in, they've more or less emptied the tank at approximately 9:30 this morning. And then as that peak demand leveled off and the plant was able to keep up with the demand, then the levels started rising back up.
After thanking Mr. Johnson for our tour of the water treatment plant, he informed us that there was over 1,000 miles of pipe carrying water all over Vanderburgh County. And it should come as no surprise that leaks and breaks occur in the system. When they do, a call is made to the Water Department construction crew. So we headed there next to find out more about the Water Department and the services it provides. Hello, Mr. Gilles. I'm Justin Huebner from Boston Evansville Link.
Duane, Gilles, Evansville Water Department.
Okay. How does the construction crew tie in with the Water Department?
Well, the construction crews actually do all the maintenance on the water system that feeds water to the customers.
Okay, could you tell us what part of the water service the Water Department is responsible for?
Yes, from the water main to the stopcock that we install near or at the property line, that is what the Water Department maintains. And from that stopcock on to the house is all plumbing and is maintained by the property owner.
How old are some of the different parts in the delivery system?
The original water filtration plant was built in 1870, so the very oldest part of the system dates back to 1870. And then as it comes away and new subdivisions were built, well, then it all becomes newer. But we have some piping that dates back to 1870.
Are there any certain times of the year that the water department has more business than other times of the year?
Water temperature of the Ohio River greatly affects the water system in Evansville because the water changes temperature, and with that change in temperature, it damages cast iron piping, and you have some expansion and contraction, and the difference in temperature from the inside of the pipe to the outside of the pipe, the cast iron pipe fractures from time to time. So that also happens in the summer. We've got water fluctuation. The temperature fluctuations are from 33 degrees on a very cold section of winter to, and I've seen it as warm as 94 degrees in a long stretch when the Ohio River is low and the water is not moving very quickly. Well, then it gets very warm, up to 94 degrees. And both of those extremes, the extremes is what actually hurts the piping and the distribution system.
Since some of the old parts have been there since the late 1800s, how long do you expect the new parts to last?
We do use top quality parts, and we expect those parts to last 100 years.
I hear on the local news occasionally that there's a water boil advisory. Could you tell us why we have that sometimes?
The reason we have that is if we have to do a repair, and just as this repair today, anytime you depressurize the water main itself, well, then we issue a precautionary boil advisory just in case there's any contamination that may occur. And so we take bacteriological tests to make sure the water is fine, and we ask people to boil water in that meantime while we are taking those tests.
Well, thank you, Mr. Gilles, for allowing us unprecedented access with you today.
It's our pleasure.
So far, we've learned where our water comes from, how it's purified, how it's transported, and how repairs are made to the system. The last stop before the water is delivered to the customer is the water meter. We caught up with my dad, Evansville Water Department meter repairman Alan Huebner, to learn about this final piece of the system. So could you tell us what we're doing here today?
We're here to change this homeowner's water meter. And the first thing we got to do is find the shutoff and then find the meter pit. That's what this is for.
So how long does it usually take to change a meter?
It all varies. Some are a little bit quicker than others. Some take a while. We'll have to get the street key and shut it off here in the stop box, and then the meter's in this pit.
So Dad, could you tell us how critical it is linking the system to the customer?
This is how they measure the water that's being used at each home. If the meter wasn't in there, they wouldn't know how much water was being used at the homes. Then they wouldn't know how to bill them. And then the city wouldn't be able to pay for the infrastructure or all the things that we do. I need to try to shut this off. That should have the water shut off to the house. And then we pop the backside loose to make sure we do have the water off. If it's off all the way, the meter will not be moving. Yeah, the meter's sitting still, so I do have the water off to the house.
How many meters do you usually repair in a day?
It all depends. Some days are better than others. You run into some issues with some. On my job, what I do is turn water on, turn water off for plumbers that's doing work at the residence. And then if I run across one that needs change, like if the electronics don't work, I go ahead and change it while I'm there. So some days you could change 10 or 12, and other days you might only change 5 or 6, but you've went and turned the water off at, say, another 15 or 20 residents, turned it off or turn it on. People move in, people move out. When they move out of the house, we go turn it off. And when somebody moves back into the resident, we go back and turn it on for them.
Does weather usually get in the way of sometimes changing a meter?
Yeah, sometimes that makes a big difference. When it's cold outside, it kind of slows the process down a little bit. When there's snow on the ground, it makes it a little bit difficult.
Is this one of the new FM meters that's supposed to be going in?
This is one of the newer styles, but they will have to change a little bit of the wiring when they get all the other system up and going. But the meter itself, yes, it will stay in there, but they'll have to change this out here, right in the top. It'll be a little different. There'll be, so to speak, an antenna where they can get their signal from their satellites.
If there is a leak on one of the dials, what do you have to do to fix it?
Usually it's in one of the couplings. It's either the rubber washer or possibly a riser could be broke. And if a riser's broke, we need to turn it over to the construction side, and then they'll come in and redo the line. That would, because that has to be dug up, and then that's all underground. They'll bring a backhoe and a crew out, and then they'll put in new risers, a new stopcock, all that'll be new.
So Dad, could you show us actually what you did down over there underneath the meter?
What actually was take this old meter out, which this, in a sense, is where your water comes in from the main shutoff, comes in the line, feeds through here. We put a new meter in, then it travels through the meter, comes back out, and goes up into the residence.
Can you imagine not having the luxury of going to a faucet and having clean water flow for whatever need you may have? We are fortunate to live in an area that provides us with safe, clean water, and we have the folks at Evansville Water Department to thank for this. Reporting for the EVSC Community Link, I'm Justin Huebner.